नमस्ते प्रणाम गीता ध्यानम। ओ पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणीम्। O Bhagavad Gita, with which Lord Narayana himself gave enlightenment to Partha, the ancient sage Vyasa included it in the Mahabharata. O Goddess, showerer of the nectar-like knowledge of non-dualism contained in your 18 chapters, O my affectionate mother, the destroyer of rebirth, I meditate upon thee. Krishna Vandana. Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kansachanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. Son of Vasudeva, the slayer of Kansa and Chanur, extreme delight for Mother Devaki, O Lord Krishna, the supreme teacher of the universe, my salutations to you. The 16th Adhyaya Daivasura Sampad Vibhaga Yoga of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. And Sri Krishna just concluded describing all those dreadful conditions of being into the demonic state. And in fact, if we see this 16th Adhyaya, Sri Krishna has spent just 5 verses on telling us about the Daivi tendencies, of the divine tendencies of people who are divinely oriented. He has spent only 5 verses, 5 shloka. But while explaining to us the dreadfulness, the hideousness of the demonic types, he has almost thrice, he has given this description in almost 14 verses as against 5 verses of the divinely oriented people. From 7th verse, 7th shloka till 20th shloka that we read, he gave us that all the gruesome and heinous and the hideous description of the unfortunate state of getting into that demonic state. And then Sri Krishna told us that ultimately when these people, they are just not able to get out of that situation, birth after birth, I just hurl them, I throw them back into the demonic worms for them never to come out of it again, as if they are permanently lost in that deepest hell. From the low rank to the lowest, these unfortunate creatures, these inhuman beings, these brutes for that matter, they have no hope. And from darkness, from dark to darker to darkest hells, they, birth after birth, they just get trapped over there. And then the last verse that we read, that Sri Krishna says, don't worry, it is not that there is no way to avoid getting into this trap of acquiring the demonic traits. You can avoid. And Sri Krishna has shown us the way. Sri Krishna says, as the beings enter the world, there are 3 gates in this creation which can lead you to being a person of the demonic traits. And which are these 3 gates? He told us: the lust, anger, and the greed. The 21st shlok that we read, Trividham narakasyedam dvaram nashanam ācaratyātmanaḥ. This narakasya dvaram, this hell has got 3 gates. You enter the gate through any of these 3 gates, that will end up into nashanam ācaratyātmanaḥ. That will end up in the destruction of the soul. Permanently that soul, that jivatman, poor guy, who is struggling to get back to the Paramatman, no scope. And birth after birth, that a poor fellow has to just toil in that state of being a demon, from one demonic worm to another demonic worm. After that, life phase extends. And then Sri Krishna says, these are the three doors. Trividham narakasya idam dwaram. Which are they? Kamaha, krodha, tatha, lobha. Kama, the lust; krodha, anger; and lobha, the greed. These are the three gates which make a soul, make a jivatman enter into that situation, that condition of being a dvait, the asura, daitya, of being that asura, being of the demonic tendency, and the unfortunate, unending hell starts for that jivatman, which ultimately gets into the total destruction for that matter. And Sri Krishna says, these three gates, etat trayam tyajed. You abandon these three gates and there is no scope for you to get into any of these types of the demonical creatures. You will only be on the devotional path. You will only be on the path of divinity. Just avoid these three gates. So having told that, now Sri Krishna is further telling us, this most compassionate Lord, out of all his graceful mercy, he is telling us a way out, how we can avoid it. He is telling us a way out, that he has already told us the way out. We have to just shun these three gates. There will be written the lust, anger, greed on these three gates. Just avoid these three gates and get into that blissful mode of the divine path. And then Sri Krishna says, etairvimuktaḥ Kaunteya tamodvāraistribhirnaraḥ ācaratyātmanaḥ śreyastato yāti parāṃ gatim. As simple as that. Just avoid the lust, anger and greed. And what will happen? What will happen to this poor fellow who has come out from that Paramatman? What will happen to this Jivatman then in that case, when those three gates are avoided, those three gates are shunned? etairvimuktaḥ Kaunteya, O Kaunteya, O Arjuna, having abandoned, having freed, having liberated from this, having liberated from entering these three gates, tamodvāraistribhirnaraḥ. The moment a person, the moment a man abandons these three gates, shuns these three gates, doesn't even look at these three gates of lust, greed and anger, what happens? ācaratyātmanaḥ śreyah. That he practices what is good for him, automatically starts picking up the divinely oriented traits, automatically starts following the path of divinity, and as a result, tatah yāti parāṃ gatim. And thus picking up all the divine traits, picking up all the righteous traits which are good for his spiritual growth, thus goes to the supreme good, the parāṃ gatim, the absolute liberation. Then that is the ultimate liberation. That is the ultimate supreme goal for all of us. That is the parāṃ gatim that Sri Krishna has been talking. So having opened our eyes of bringing out the picture of how these demonical people, they behave, how they think, how they acquire those traits, now Sri Krishna tells us that just abandon those three gates and don't even get into that trap of getting into the delusion. Don't get into the trap of ending up into that dark field of gruesomeness, that dark field of hideousness, that dark field of being inhuman, being brutes, being cruel, and getting into that most unfortunate state that birth after birth one has to suffer in this condition. So, the man who is liberated from these three gates to darkness, these are the three gates to tama. Now, tamas, there are two things. One is tamoguna as well as tamas, the darkness. Because there is no illumination there. There is no enlightenment there. The whole phase is in utter darkness. So Sri Krishna says that, and it connotes, it signifies the lack of enlightenment. This phase of being a demonic, it signifies the phase of without any light, without any knowledge, without any devotion. It is totally dark. And what happens in dark? In darkness, we can't even see our own hands, our own limbs. We can't even see anything surrounding us. We just keep on hitting the objects on the way, tumbling down, falling down, getting hurt, and crying in pain. That's what happens when we stumble in the darkness. So Sri Krishna says these three gates which are leading one to the darkness, once they are abandoned, once they are shunned, what happens? ācaratyātmanaḥ śreyaha. That person, that Atman, automatically starts doing what is good for it. Automatically starts performing the actions that are conducive for the liberation. Automatically gets into that mode of muksha, of seeking the liberation. They become the seeker instead of trotting in the darkness. Instead of simply crying out of pain at the end of it, oh, where have I come? First of all, don't enter that area of darkness at all. Just shun that area of darkness, shun those three gates. Get away from that lust, anger, and greed, these three gates, not to be looked at. And then the person practices what is good for him and thus goes to the supreme good, goes to the ultimate goal, the parāṃ gatim. That is what happens. That is how we can avoid actually. So all that Sri Krishna has explained from 7th to 20th shloka becomes immaterial if we don't look at these three gates. If we just abandon these three gates, if we just shun these three gates of lust, anger, and greed, then the explanation and the details that Sri Krishna has given from Shloka 7 till 20th stands no value for us. But to know why we should abandon these three gates, Sri Krishna has abundantly described. Sri Krishna has described in great details of what happens to these people of the demonic traits. What happens to these people who are evil-minded, who are so unrighteous. So beware of it, Sri Krishna says. After explaining in the great details, now we know how we can avoid getting into that condition, how we can avoid falling into that trap of they may lure us. The gates of lust, anger, and greed may lure us. Hey, come, my child. Here are such lovely things I'm going to give you. You just see. They will show the trailer. And then, when we enter the gate, then when the real movie starts, that is the most terrific situation. That is the most horrifying situation then. Then we cannot come out of it. Sri Krishna says, I close the doors then. I just, birth after birth, then people have to be there. People have to be in that dark and the tamasa field. So, don't even look at these three gates. Misery is another name for hell. Whenever man is afflicted and unhappy, he is for the time being in hell. And why should there be this unwanted hellishness for him? It is all due to his lack of insight. Doesn't listen to the voice from within. Don't enter that gate of lust. Don't enter that gate of anger. Don't enter that gate of greed. That inner voice is always cautioning, but we pay no heed to that inner voice. We pay no heed to that viveka. We pay no heed to that discernment. And we enter the three gates happily at that point of time, only to keep on rotting birth after birth. And that is how we end up in the most miserable situation. The Satan of ignorance is the instigator inducing man to indulge in lust, anger, and greed. When these three evils are eliminated, the path of enlightenment opens. That fellow is calling us, come, 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 come. Here are all the things for you to enjoy. You will make wealth yourself to enjoy all these things. Come, I will show you the ways how to make money, how to make the wealth, how to amass the wealth. I will show you. And if we discern at that point of time, if we have that insight of not to even look at that Satan, not to even look at that call from the hell, not to hear that call from the hell, then only is the way to take up the path of liberation, to take up the path of divinity. When these three evils are eliminated, path of enlightenment opens. So, say goodbye, my dear fellow. You are calling me, fine. I appreciate your welcoming stance. You calling me with the open arms to embrace me. But I'm sorry. You be happy with you. You be happy with those three gates. Oh Satan, be happy yourself. I am not the one who is going to be lured by those temptations. I am not going to be one who is going to get caught in that net of lust, anger, and greed. That net is not for me. Maybe some other fellow you can try. Not me. Sorry. The darkness of ignorance vanishes of its own accord, and then man progresses in Shreyas. When the gate to prayers is abandoned, that pleasure-seeking tendency is shunned. That pleasure-seeking tree is cut asunder by that aches of non-attachment. Then there is evolution towards becoming a Shreyas. From prayers to Shreyas. No more pleasure-seeking, but enlightenment and illumination. When the demonical man takes to the divine way, his progress is very rapid. And when we abandon those three gates of lust, anger, and greed, then the progress on the path of spirituality, the progress on the path of the divinity is so fast. A zealous covert that he is, he hastens quickly Godward. And then Sri Krishna says that such a person who has shunned these three hell, the deadliest gates to the hell, having abandoned, having overlooked, having paid no attention to these three gates, then that person, yāti, parāṃ, gatim, then he reaches the supreme goal. And what is our supreme goal? Our supreme goal is nothing but merging one with the Parabrahman, with the Paramatman, which is our true abode, which is our ultimate abode, which is our ultimate destination. So Sri Krishna has so graciously, so compassionately told us the way out, how we as devotees, how we as followers of Krishna's teachings, we can avoid getting into that rotten state of being born again and again and again through those devilish worms, to those demonic worms. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Sri Krishna Arpanamastu. Jai Sri Ramakrishna. Jai Thakur. Jai Ma. Jai Swamiji.